Hello and welcome. Now, when going through the comments and questions, I noticed there were a few with regards to eating, Buddhists and vegetarianism, hunting out of necessity, and also in relation to my comments with regards to farming, which I may have not explained myself clearly enough. The inference taken was that I was passing the buck by just eating food offered to me and relying on others to manufacture, farm that food, and that I said it's their bad karma, not mine, for eating it. That is true, but that is not the intention of eating that way. As a Buddhist monk, I go on Pindapata, arms round, and receive gratefully any food that is offered. That may include fish, meat, eggs, dairy products. Those I don't eat, but offer, give to someone else. What remains in my bowl, some rice, some dal, some vegetables, maybe some chickpeas, a banana or two, a mango, something like that, is my meal, is my staple diet for that one day. I'm answering 3 or 4 comments in one overall statement here, hopefully covering all the points you made in some rather lengthy comments that are difficult to manage in this form, on this platform, in this environment, when I'm relying on just a small smartphone with a little screen and no one reading the questions for me, just doing this by myself. So it's all sort of from memory of what I read. Then the food goes off and people can take what they need, what they like, and that's fine. I just leave it outside and let the selection process happen organically. It's not me going out selecting people giving or anything like this. People are familiar with my routine, and when I've got left in my bowl what's needed for my nutritional daily requirement, everything else I leave on the table outside for people to help themselves to. Now, yes, sometimes someone was asking, how often do people offer meat? How is it necessary? Why? Blah, blah, blah. You know, I don't really think about this sort of stuff. I eat literally just to live, not living to eat. These aren't videos about food I'm making here. If you look at videos about food in Sri Lanka, they have millions and millions of viewers, millions of subscribers, and adverts all the way through them for Domino's Pizza or something like that, I would imagine. But that isn't the nature of my life, my practice, and certainly not the nature of this channel to discuss food. The topic of vegetarianism and Buddhism, I think we've discussed over and over again, but I don't ever mind just repeating that it is not a requirement to be vegetarian as a Buddhist, but it is a requirement we do not kill. In another comment, actually, I have to, as it's come to mind, I can't, you see, if you make too longer comments, I can't have them in front of me because they won't all fit on the screen. On another comment, someone said that I said that Buddhism was the only way to enlightenment and there's no other way. And I'm talking about what Buddhism considers as enlightenment. So that is true. And you said that I said it goes as far to not even killing the bacteria in one's gut. Well, I did not say that. I think if I did, it was very much wrong. We cannot help that. I was explaining that by the very nature of existence, we're always killing things. That doesn't prevent us attaining to enlightenment. Our intention is what, if we intend to kill anything, this is what will prevent us attaining to enlightenment. that commenter also mentioned that some beings require a God, a belief in a God, supernatural beings or whatever, in order to have the mind trained in a way that they can become enlightened. Well, this is just not Buddhist philosophy. It's what we would not call right view. So, this is just something aside, which is your own opinion, which is fine. And then finally you said, isn't just focusing on dukkha causing more suffering by making that the condition? No, it's seeing the reality of existence. It's the fundamental nature of Buddhist philosophy, the Buddha's teachings, that there's suffering. But the bright and cheery side to that is that by identifying the cause of suffering, we can eradicate the cause and become free from suffering in this lifetime, without relying on a God, without relying on some belief system, but through our own experience, our own investigation, and therefore our own understanding of the reality of existence, the characteristics of existence, their very nature, and how we can improve our lives immediately within this lifetime, and therefore see that as a result of that, that there is a potential for either freedom from future rebirth or directing that rebirth in a positive way. Rebirth into the human realm with exposure to Dharma again to further your practice, and so on. But within this lifetime itself, we can become free from suffering and really experience the true benefits of the practice. This is what the Dharma teaches. So back to eating. Just on a point-by-point basis, we do not kill any living being. So hunting to survive is no excuse. So if I was on a desert island and there was nothing to eat other than rats, if one died, maybe I could eat it, but I couldn't kill it. I could make that choice and eat it and survive, but what would be the point? I would be exposing myself to many more lifetimes of rebirth as a result of that bad karma that I've created, but also ignoring that absolute fact, I would be suffering in this lifetime for having taken the life of a sentient being, harmed another sentient being. That dear little rat would be better off as my friend to keep me company whilst I'm dying. I'm going to die anyway, whether it's in that situation or later on. You're referring to evolution and the 3,000 years of human existence or something. I think it's more than that. I don't know, 3 million years, whatever. Historically, we've had to hunt to survive. Yeah, this is called evolution. We've evolved. We don't any longer put on our bear skins, take up our spears and give our wives a good hiding, tie the children up and then go marching off to kill mammoths in the morning to bring them back some new furry blankets, some tusks to make things with, and some meat to eat. We've evolved from that. And that's how Buddhism and the right time came about in evolution for the Buddha to be born as a human in this realm and expose us, teach us the Dharma, show us the way forward towards enlightenment. When there were a few people, not many, with a little dust in their eyes to receive the Dharma. You see, the Buddha didn't come around in prehistoric times when we had to hunt to survive. There was probably no point, no room for there to be enlightened beings as a result of listening to the Dharma. So we shouldn't think too deeply about the beginnings of the universe, and the Buddha even says, don't even try to concept. He doesn't talk ever about before the beginnings of this, only that this is just one of many universes that come and go into existence. There's no beginning of cosmology or an end to cosmology. It's all samsara, but is that we are stepping out of into nibbana. We're stepping away from the this physical body, this thinking brain, this environment we're surrounded by, the world, the universe of elements, of solidity, of liquidity, of gaseousness, of heat, our consciousness, our thinking brain's consciousness of that. We're stepping outside of all of that. So we shouldn't spend this lifetime investigating the origins of that, much of which is already known and explained to us in science, but to just appreciate the blessings, the benefit of the existence we do have. Another point made was with regards to this killing. I said that I don't let a fire on the ground but burn some food wrappings in the can. And someone said, shouldn't I be telling people not to offer me food in wrappings? People offer me food into my bowl in many forms. Some put food straight into the bowl, some put it in, wrap it in paper, some in this biodegradable plastic wrapping, some in a plastic bag. It's not for me to be picky and choosy. But when I come home, I dispose of all of that as ecologically and effectively as I possibly can. And all I said was that I burn in that little can a few bits and bobs that I can't put in the plastic recycling basket. On my way on Pindapata, I put my plastic empty water bottles, which you get quite a few of, offered to you, in the plastic bottle recycling basket when there is one there. Some things that don't go in there, food wrappings for instance, that you could bury, but I can't dig the ground, so I do burn them in that little can. But we're talking about a few tiny little bits of paper. And you suggested, or someone suggested, I give those back to unwrap them, give them back to the person offering to dispose of them. Well, I wouldn't know how they would be disposing of them. At least I know that the food's all kept intact. And it's that's just the most effective way I found. But do you know what? This doesn't take a lot of thought on my part. I'm not an ecologist. Another question in relation to this was, why then aren't monks activists in ecology? Why aren't we going out trying to save the planet and taking up all this? Why are we just sitting alone in the forest doing nothing and meditating? Well, I think you know, we're not just sitting alone in the forest doing nothing and meditating. I go out and I meet 30 to 40 people every morning. And although we don't exchange anything by way of conversation, they have the opportunity to practice generosity and give me something to eat, put some food in my bowl, which they find deeply satisfying. I can see, I can feel, I can know from their expressions and the happiness that's generated as a result of that action, both on my part, but more so how happy it makes them to be giving me something. I then give them a nice chanted blessing, which they appreciate very much. Many of these people don't have the time or the opportunity to go to the temple and spend lots of time. They, are expected to dress up and go there with offerings, and it's quite a formal procedure. So me just walking through the streets, and anyone that bumps into me can have the same temple experience, but on the street, during their mornings, in their real lives, and not in some affected artificial, well, not artificial, but formal environment, which they can save for special occasions. So it brings the Dharma, it brings the practice into their lives on a daily basis. And they can also ask a question or even arrange to come and see me here where I stay, and I'll have more detailed talkings or whatever they wish to do when they come to see me. So that's one aspect of what we're doing. Ecologically speaking, as I've said many times, as individuals we cannot save the world, but what we can do as individuals is not selfishly save ourselves, but set an example to others as to how to live with as small a footprint as is humanly possible. Now, you will accidentally kill bacteria in your gut. It's natural, parasites. You will have to dispose of some litter at some point, which might involve burning the odd little bit of plastic in a can as carefully as possible. A little smoke will go into the air. But if you're not eating piles and piles of McDonald's meals in polystyrene containers and consuming pounds and pounds of beef, which is coming from cattle, exuding literally gallons of methane into the atmosphere and destroying acres and acres of forest in exchange for grasslands and all of this stuff, if you're not doing that, you're doing good by doing nothing. So there's nothing more ecological than the forest monk's life, living in the forest, in what are natural material cotton robes washed and dyed with natural organic tree substances, only one set. It's not going into a washing machine using electricity with ungreen kinds of detergent and heating elements and all of this. Each outfit every day, once a week at the most, this gets rinsed in a bucket of cold water. I rinse myself with a bucket of cold water and a bit of natural soap that someone's offered to me. The same with my clothing. I eat just what's given to me and just enough to keep me alive. Just some rice, some vegetables, some dal, some chickpeas and some bananas. Not much at all. And drink water. And on occasions, as often as I can, because I enjoy those occasions, some coffee, which is just hot water and not instant manufactured ground coffee, but locally produced, grown and ground Sri Lankan coffee beans. So no flying involved there. I'm trying never to go anywhere ever again. I've asked that I can stay here for at least another year, and that's okay. And trying to sort out the situation so I don't have to travel because of visas. I thought I might have to go back to the UK because my passport has run out, having been away for now sort of 10 years. They only last 10 years. And I hopefully have got around that so that a new passport will arrive here in due course. I'm conscious of all these things to minimize my own footprint. But if you look at my surroundings and how I live and where I live and compare them to your own, before the long comments about generally how monastic life isn't doing its bit to save the world, then I think you might have second thoughts about what you're saying and feel, well, yeah, they're actually doing no harm. They're living very simply, very quietly. They need very little. We don't really need electricity. We don't need much in the way of anything other than a bit of shelter from the sun and from the rain. So we do our very best. And in that sense, I don't think the practice is that selfish. And anyone is welcome to find a Buddhist monastery near them, a forest monastery, and go and stay there. Try it for themselves, experience it, live that way. Right, so I think I answered all of those points on those questions. I wanted to get them out of the way before going through the more general comments, because I think they related to some mentions I made in the most recent video. And I can't usually remember, well, I just can't remember the last video, even if it was only yesterday, exactly what I talked about, because these talks aren't planned, rehearsed, they're not written down, they come from the heart, so to speak. I just sit and talk. The most I do by way of planning is screenshot your comments so that I can read them and reply to them here and now. But anything else that I'm speaking about off the cuff is just coming from me. So I don't retain it. It comes out and it's gone. And I won't always be right. And any suggestions you have are always welcome. But we have a very good code of conduct. The Vinaya isn't just a dogmatic religious set of rules. In fact, it's far from that. It's our guidebook as to how to live this way. How to live this way comfortably enough, get just enough food, and to do so without harming any other sentient beings, without doing any harm to ourselves or others, or indeed the environment. There are prescribed ways in which we wash, clean our robes and carry out our ablutions also within there, to do no harm to the surrounding environment, whether it's to people's own opinions and views by disturbing them, what they feel is right and wrong, or to nature itself. You know, how we go to the toilet, for instance, and it's all prescribed to us in our code of conduct, very specifically. So we cannot make the mistakes. One sutta was with regards to some nuns who were disposing of their going to the toilet in the night, commode, buckets, pots, whatever you call them, wee, urine, whatever you call it, by throwing it over the wall, like this, over the boundary wall in the morning, which seemed okay. But of course, this is not okay. You can't see what's over the other side of that wall. So there is a rule pertaining to this action, how one would dispose of such content carefully, mindfully, meaningfully, in a quiet corner where there's no vegetation, where there's no obvious animals around. And these kinds of things are very well thought out by not just the Buddha off the top of his head and thought this would be a good idea, but through 45 years of training bhikkhus and bhikkhunis in the Sangha and learning by trial and error, learning by mistakes, what works and what doesn't work when living and integrating the Sangha in society, because we are the fourfold assembly. There are monks and nuns, laymen and laywomen, dependent on each other. Now, I have tried to fit as well as I can in this local society, this village and the nearby town. And I think if I hadn't, to some degree, I'm sure there's areas for improvement on my part, but if I hadn't, to some degree, been able to fit in to some extent seamlessly without causing any impact or negative impact on my surrounding environment, whether it be nature, people, or animals, then perhaps I wouldn't be as welcome as I very much feel I am, and get the feedback and the encouragement to stay here, to be here, and to continue doing exactly what I'm doing in the way I'm doing it, here in this very Buddhist country. So I would suggest that they, as familiar as they are, and they have, as lay practitioners in countries like this, have more knowledge of the suttas and as much knowledge of the Vinaya, the code of conduct for monks and nuns, as I do, because it's part of their culture. It's their educational reference from early childhood through to continuing through their adult lives. It's their life, it's their practice. So I learn a lot from them, and hopefully in exchange I give back to them what they expect in the behaviour of a bhikkhu, living this life of solitude within their society, within their own community. And then also one comment just on the end of the finishing off the food one was that someone couldn't bear, they want to become a monk, but they couldn't bear to become a monk if they thought that they had to eat meat. Well, you never have to eat anything that's in your bowl. You just push it aside and eat what's there. But if your main, if that something like food, whatever that food may be, if something like food is what's preventing you from exploring becoming a monk further, then you're not really ready to explore becoming a monk further. Look at how food is too important to you. Yes, we need to eat. Back to the sort of the hunt to survive thing. Yes, but we do need to eat, but we only need so much to survive. So we should, going back to that phrase, eat in order to live, not live in order to eat. And then it becomes such an insignificant aspect. I actually found that the whole eating, when I first went to live in a monastery, eating part of the day was the most hard for me. I had no appetite. I found it uncomfortable and quite stressful, the environment in which I had to eat, you know, quite quickly, in close proximity to like many other monks, with all people sitting around watching you eating, staring at you, unfamiliar food, eating from a bowl with my hands only, and then having to stick by, I think there's at least 15 in just the training rules for a novice monk. 15 of those are just to how you eat, how you chew, how you don't lick your lips, how you don't lick your fingers. Paying attention to all of these rules is really difficult. You imagine someone gives you a donut and you'd be breaking a Vinaya rule if you lick your lips because of the sugar on it. Or then you have some nice food and then your fingers, you want to just lick your fingers. You can't do this. You've got people watching you, so you're setting an example. Now this is training. These are the training rules. That's what they're called, the Sakya rules. So it's because this is training in mindfulness, in willpower, in determination to get it right and to do things, everything, all of our actions of body, speech and mind beautifully, and not in an unseemly fashion, so that it's a pleasure to watch the monks eat. This is how it should be, which is why there's all people staring at you whilst you're eating. But when you're first in that situation, you're really not very hungry. You tend to leave quite a lot and give it to the dogs outside. And that brings me on to the first comment, the first normal comment. Can I have a cat as a monk too? One of the things preventing me from getting a cat is that I'm thinking about becoming a monk. We'll say, yes, don't get a cat, become a monk. It's far more important. Getting a cat is just another commitment, an attachment for you, a responsibility, and it may be or may not be, they're quite independent, a hindrance to you ever ordaining. So it shouldn't even be a consideration. But as far as pets, we don't have pets as monks or nuns in monasteries, but monasteries tend to have, because they're safe places. This is a monastery, it's not a temple, it's not got a big sala, there's not a big statue here, but anywhere a monk lives is a monastery, in the sense that that's what that word comes from. Steres. It's where a place lives. It's a kuti specifically is the Pali word for a little hut or whatever that a monk stays in. But anywhere a monk is living, animals get the sense that it's a safe place to be because we don't kill. And animals detect this when you literally cannot kill another sentient being, not because it's a rule, but you've been accustomed to this behavior of restraining from killing any sentient beings for so long, it's impossible to even conceive of the idea that you could harm another being. This is just natural development in the practice, and animals sense that you can do them no harm. This is why cobras and pythons, all sorts of snakes come in. They come in here sometimes, and the warrens, these great big water monitors, will walk in here. Frogs, spiders, everything comes in here because they know that they're safe, but they also I don't fear them. They know I won't do them any harm, so they too would rather get out of my way. If I notice them or they see me, they shoot out of the way quickly. So by that very nature of monasteries being safe places, they attract many dogs, especially monasteries in cities and towns, many stray dogs, stray cats. Here, there aren't so many stray dogs, not like back in India, but there are a few that hang around you, and you hear some sometimes. There are the cats that are not stray, they're owned by families, but they like to visit. The cats come here because they like to visit. They know that I cannot help but give them a little bit of food occasionally. I just want to. It's just something that's so nice. I have very few opportunities to give. So when a cat comes along, it's very easy for me to give it something to eat. And that attracts them, of course. But they're not our pets. The cats you see here, you've seen in these videos, I've had many little friends accompany me in these videos, ranging from dogs and cats over the years, cows, geckos, snakes, dogs, cats, of all manner of. You kind of were watching the videos recently with featuring Rosie mainly, who's not my cat, she's a family's cat nearby. This must be within around 300 meters, that's how far they sort of roam. And now she's extended her boundaries by spending half of her time here. She's my latest friend, if you like, here. But they come and they go. And I have to always be aware as a monk that I am coming and going. So I may move on somewhere else, and you cannot take pets easily with you, especially if you're moving to different countries. So dogs and cats or any forms of pets are not recommended. Now, whether there's a specific Vinaya rule with regards to pets, there isn't. We're not allowed to cage animals. This is the rule, or something like that, or restrict animals in any way is the rule. But I think it wouldn't have crossed monastics' minds back in those days to have a pet necessarily, or use animals in any way, because we don't use animals for farming. We don't do any farming. And back to that whole farming thing. Yes, so I wasn't passing the buck there with the farming. Someone's got to do it, but we do have that choice ourselves as to what our career path is, which is why we have right livelihood in the Noble Eightfold Path. We don't have to get so complicated about all this stuff and make it so difficult. That's why the Noble Eightfold Path is there. Is it right view? Was it our intention? Is this right speech? Is this okay? Is this a good action? Is this right livelihood? Are we putting in enough effort? Am I being mindful? Am I concentrating? That's the Noble Eightfold Path. It's not hard, is it? This is just questions you ask yourself in order to stay within its parameters. So no, you can't get a cat and take it with you to ordain. Oh, you do then go on to say something about, which is kind of relevant, maybe you can add in how to deal with the fleas, because you think that fleas find you delicious. Oh. And you can't imagine a cat in the forest doesn't have fleas. Well, I'm sure cats anywhere, they have fleas, parasites, and this, that, and the other. I don't even think about it. A couple of people have made comments saying that they've noticed this cat or the kittens doing what they do, picking at their skin, because they probably have fleas, or I think it's actually mosquito bites, but if it's fleas, it's fleas. They deal with themselves. We don't interfere with nature, not just because I'm a monk. I don't think generally people do here in this part of the world. It all just balances out and takes care of itself. After all, fleas are sentient beings also. They need somewhere to live. The cats have nothing else to do. They will look after their own skin. They keep very clean, cats are very independent. And yeah, the fleas do get on me. I get bitten by all sorts of things, especially in the night, because you're not aware if you're asleep. They get inside these robes that I'm wrapped in, and I don't worry about it. It's not a problem. Okay, what have I done? So, can a married person become enlightened and still have sex? Oh, that's to the point, isn't it? So a married person, technically speaking, could become enlightened if they weren't too involved in marital life, because that's going to take up a large part of their mental capacity. Just even simple being nice to your partner, interacting with your partner, your wife or husband, is to some extent, although it may be done with compassion, with loving kindness, and with joy and equanimity, so the 4 Brahma Viharas, it's still an attachment you have. It's love, a bond you have, which is differentiated from metta. By metta, loving kindness, is universal, unconditional love for yourself and all beings. Whereas love in that marital concept is specifically an attachment to another based on desire, on liking, on passion, on lust, attraction, on all these things. That's how you first met and became to speak to your partner, unless they were arranged for you, in which case someone else made those decisions on your behalf. But nevertheless, that compatibility has to be formed in the first place, and then love and commitment is a hindrance, sensual desire, a hindrance to enlightenment. So in that sense, it isn't really possible to become enlightened. Once you are on the path and you become disenchanted with sensual desire, you may respectfully and kindly ask and agree that you part from your partner, your wife or husband, and go and ordain, or just go and live alone and practice and let them get on with their lives. That's okay. But by which time you would have lost interest in sex. So in answer to your question, overall the answer would be no, because you would not be on the path even towards enlightenment, or very far on the path towards enlightenment, when you still have an interest in marriage and sex in that scenario, in that way. You can certainly be developing all of the parami, the qualities that are necessary towards enlightenment. You can be keeping the precepts. You can still have this sexual relationship whilst keeping the precepts. The third precept is refrain from sexual misconduct, not sex, not becoming celibate. And you can be in relationships, that's not a problem. And that is all still sila. You can still find time for meditation, samadhi, and you can still develop wisdom. So you can follow the Noble Eightfold Path. It's just to attain to anything, even possibly, I think, Sotapanna, the first stage of enlightenment, stream entry, you have to be able to cut those ties of attachment to that relationship. And before you'd cut those ties of attachment to that relationship, you would have lost interest. By the progressive nature of the practice, you would have lost interest in sex. Okay. Oh, okay. And this is the same question. Can a enlightened person be engaged in sexual activity? Or does an enlightenment naturally dissolve the desire for sex? Well, enlightenment doesn't dissolve the desire. You dissolve the desire to become enlightened. So you naturally would have lost the desire before you could become enlightened. Beginning, okay, inspiring, so. So, someone's visited monasteries, developing nibbita. Nibbita is a disenchantment with worldly life. It's really struck now, you say. And you're struggling in keeping happy at my job and really in most material activities. So yes, this is the nature of nibbita. So don't struggle being happy with those. Just see them as your duties, what do you have to do, but find your happiness in your practice outside of the time that you're having to spend doing those duties. But still developing samadhi in that time with also the development of mindfulness, so that you can see other ways of enjoying carrying out those duties. I had to spend many years when first practicing with many duties that I had to continue in order to finance my life that were very mundane and boring and pointless in my opinion. But I saw that as only an opinion. and took the time whilst carrying out those mundane activities to still try as much as I possibly could to observe the breath. Even if I had a 12-hour shift of work, all of that time I kept coming back to watching the breath, or saying Bhutto, 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 developing mindfulness through all of that time. Even when attending to something that required a lot of concentration and focus, I would use that as a way of expanding my mind's ability to concentrate and focus, with a view to using that later in samadhi. So intertwining it with your practice in that sense, but seeing it as a duty that can be also used as a tool to see disliking, see aversion, but don't let it develop into aversion. Let it be a tool to develop mindfulness. Let it be a tool to develop concentration. You can't ordain or go on retreats due to my dog and the job. Any reflections on how best to practice? Oh, well, I think I've just said how best to practice. And then with regards to the job and the dog, you can't go on retreats. So you can have retreats at home, make your own retreats. You might find them some online useful, or just determine to spend a week at home on your holiday time, 10 hours a day meditating, 9 or 10 hours a day meditating, keeping the 8 precepts. Just do as the Buddha prescribed. For a week, keep the 8 precepts and meditate every waking hour that you possibly can. And the dog will join in. It'll need a walk occasionally, and you can enjoy that also as part of your break from your sitting meditation, giving you some exercise, and just have retreats at home. And if that's it. But do remember there's attachments to pets, to dogs, to partners, family, relationships, like attachments to ourselves even. One should be continually reflecting that we will be parted from those we love as they will be parted from us. And pets especially, whom don't have such long lifespans as humans necessarily, must be considered to be very temporary in nature. And the more you're attached, the more painful it will be when you lose them. So if you can give your dog away and go to a monastery and ordain, then you part happily. You say, bye-bye dog, you're going to a nice home, and someone will gratefully take on looking after your lovely dog, and you go off and you gratefully take on the responsibilities of ordaining and becoming a monk and becoming enlightened, knowing that your dog went off to a happy life and you're going off to a happy life. So there's one way you can look at your future. Yes. Social anxiety, right. It stops you from doing many things you wish to do. A very specific situation I would like to talk about happened today. I tried doing an online meditation group on Zoom. The people in person introduced themselves. When I was asked to present myself on camera, I locked up, then offered it as a way of merit, and that for some reason made me leave. How could I have responded respectfully without running away? I don't think it's disrespectful in such an environment, or even if it was a real physical environment, you didn't run away, you stepped away. You got up, you walked away. I don't think on Zoom you can physically run away. I don't know, I've not done a Zoom thing, I don't think. But if you're feeling uncomfortable in any environment, the best advice, and the Buddha gives us this advice, is to walk away if it's something like that, rather than suffer unduly or react wrongly and maybe cause either harm to yourself or others, or offence to yourself or others. I don't think you would have caused offence there either. And I'm actually rather concerned that that's the format such a Zoom meeting would take. You should be able to just watch, surely, in the background, or listen. You should not have to be or feel forced to participate in any way. There are a couple of Zoom things I watch from a Thai forest tradition environment, and they certainly are not, people aren't required to speak. or maybe they are, and they just seem very comfortable with it. I don't know. But yeah, you asked me how to deal with anxiety. Yes, I have spoken about anxiety a lot on this channel. They just search anxiety within this channel, or anxiety English Buddhist monk, they come up. But social anxiety, there's nothing wrong with avoiding those situations. You say many things you'd like to do, and you give me one good example. I would suggest don't do that again. Find another Zoom meeting that is not going to ask anything of you. It is, I mean, as far as offering it as merit, I don't really get that. I don't think that's quite right. It doesn't sound to me that was the kind of meeting hosted by monastics or a monk or a nun necessarily. I think they would be a little bit more flexible and understanding. You see, we meet online with people from all over the world. If you're a monk and you're in Sri Lanka here or in Thailand, anyone coming to see you is going to bow, they're going to sit in a certain way, they're going to wear certain types of clothing and do everything in a certain way because it's the culture. But we don't expect everyone from around the world to do that. Far from it. Other people will greet you in different ways. People greet me in different ways. You'll see in just the comments. Hi, dude. Hey, bro. Such. You know, nobody takes any offense. This is just different people behaving in different ways. And you should feel comfortable in your own skin, so to speak. Feel comfortable behaving how you wish to behave and not constrained by practice, but guided by it. So don't see it as something to make you anxious from trying to attend anything in the future, but perhaps don't bother going back to that one again if it wasn't such a good experience. Or just listen to some Dharma, or just listen to some Zoom meetings when they're on YouTube, because they're normally, as I say, I've never done a Zoom thing, so I'm not sure. Actually, I have, but it was a while ago, and I must say I was just more focused on trying to make the actual technology side of it work than even what was going on in the meeting, because I had internet issues, power issues and all sorts of things going on. I was in India, so it is by no way an example. Yes, so breathing, saying Bhutto, 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 breathing. Breathing, I think, is the best thing, coming back to the breath always, and just knowing that that is your refuge, your meditation object, and samadhi ultimately. But mindfulness of the breath you can be carrying about with you all of the time, wherever you go, whatever you face, and enjoy it always as breathe in. No one can take that away from you, but you can enjoy it and you can breathe out. And if you're quiet for a few moments, that's okay. Give someone the opportunity to ask another question or ask you another question, and you the opportunity to think about the answer. And if you don't have an answer or you're not sure, never be afraid to say, I don't know, or I'm not sure. And they'll come back to you or they'll leave you alone. So don't worry about it. You're not alone there. I'm sure many people would find any kind of environment, from how you describe it, I think I would find that rather disconcerting. I don't know, you always appreciate your wisdom. Can I talk about healing from someone that has wronged you? Sorry, I'm going to have to skip that one. It's not really translated very well. Okay. So if you don't want to watch these videos of me sitting here saying nothing for 10 minutes, keep your comments brief because I have to read them. So I don't have someone else to read them to me, and some of them aren't necessarily written in your first language. So I have to kind of make a little bit of sense of them. So to avoid you wasting your internet which maybe if you have Wi-Fi you're not concerned with, but we don't have that here. Maybe to avoid just wasting data or time in terms of sitting and watching me sweat here trying to find the question, keep the comments to the point, really. And then there's something simple to discuss. So we'll have to skip that one, and what I'll do is maybe go back to it and highlight the point. If there is doubt, do not. A wisdom I received from you today. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Ah, yes. When in doubt, do nout. Actually, I should have explained that more clearly. So I copied this one because it gives me the opportunity to do so now. So when there is doubt, do nout. Nout is an old English colloquialism, so an old-fashioned word meaning nothing. So when in doubt, do nothing. And then eventually the decision which way or the other to go will come to you. That's what I meant by there. And yeah, I mean, it's nothing that particularly wise. It just makes sense, doesn't it? If you don't know whether to go and have a cup of tea or have a cup of coffee, then probably what it does mean is you're not very thirsty. But if in doubt, do nothing, and then eventually you'll have to go and get yourself a glass of water, won't you? Something like that. So yeah, when in doubt, do nout. But nice, brief, point to the point question. Funny how we forget to breathe properly. Babies naturally breathe abdominally. At some point, growing up, we change to upper chest breathing. I wonder why. Okay, so I'm no doctor or physiotherapist, but I think we start to breathe from the chest as our lives get more complicated, as we get anxious, because what happens is when you breathe from the chest, you have to use a lot of muscles and move a lot of bones. We are breathing from the chest means you're expanding the rib cage in order to bring the air into the lungs, creating a vacuum to bring the air into the lungs, to get a quick intake of breath, oxygen. This comes from adrenaline, fight or flight mechanism, the nature of survival, to get as much oxygen in our bodies as possible so that we can run quickly or act quickly. But of course a baby isn't in that panicking situation, so naturally and calmly just breathes, as is the natural thing to do, from the abdomen. We have a diaphragm between the lower part of our rib cage and the guts that just needs to go up and down a little bit like a drum in order to make that same vacuum, to bring in enough air to live by and exhale enough air to live by. So that's the natural way of breathing. But through complexities of life and human nature, through greed, hatred and delusion really, this is a good physical example of how that affects us. We breathe from the chest. And this is the whole point of breath meditation. When you come to really analyze how you're breathing, you will find that eventually, through meditation, you will just naturally revert to breathing back as the baby does. So if you're a meditator, you won't be breathing from the chest. You won't be needing to breathe from the chest because there is never this anxiety or panic arising to do so. You will just gently be breathing from the abdomen. And in the Burmese tradition, meditation techniques of noting, they generally are noting the rising and falling of the abdomen, of the tummy, as opposed to the breath going in and out through the nostrils. So we focus in Anapanasati on the whole body of the breath, as we breathe in, as we breathe out. But in modern times, it seems we have started, or people have started to focus on the tip of the nose, the nostrils, to the air coming in and the air going out, which isn't actually mentioned in the Anapanasati Sutta, but what is mentioned is the whole body of the breath. One assumes from that the Buddha wasn't panicking and was breathing from the diaphragm. So you can choose whether it's at the tip of the nose or the abdomen if you need to observe the breath at a particular point. but the whole body of the breath gives you the opportunity to know if the breath is deep, shallow, long, short, coarse, subtle. All of these qualities of the breath, warm, cool, and understand that feeling and be able to relax into that feeling and then bring the breath back to the abdomen. So actually the nature of the practice is to unforget breathing properly and to very much breathe properly, as babies would naturally do, as we naturally did, and as meditators now naturally do. So on that very useful point to remember, noting breathing, if you are feeling your ribs moving when you breathe, make that your observation and then relax, let the body relax, and see that just your abdomen, this diaphragm rather, will do all the breathing for you very easily and very naturally, with little muscular movement, no bones having to move. The ribs have to open up, cracking and moving against the back of the spine and the shoulder blades and everything expanding to breathe that way. Whereas you can sit and breathe very subtly with the diaphragm. Use this as your meditation object. Very powerful way of bringing your attention into the breath, into the body, into the present moment, here and now. And on that note and that point, I think I'll leave it there. Sorry if there were some gaps. I'll have to try and maybe plan it more. Well, I'm not going to try and plan it more. Just please make your comments to the point so that I can read them. Because I can't just read some of them if they're quite long. I don't know what they're going to say. I might be reading along and there might be something dodgy in there that I wouldn't want to say. Or even... Anyway, you understand what I'm saying. Thank you for watching. Hopefully there's something useful there. If there is, you can use it. And if not, then just let it go. And don't overthink about it. Don't get too worried about one tiny little plastic bag that I might have burnt in the little tin can out there. Whether it might have been a better idea to give that to someone else to take to the plastic recycling place on their scooter using fuel. You know, all of these debates that go on and on and on. I'm really trying my best here to make as little footprint as possible. And the best way I can do that, with your support here, is talking to you in this way, via this platform, in this format, which I think uses very little electricity, energy, resources, anywhere. Certainly here at this end it doesn't use much because there isn't much in the way of resources to use. So I'm sure similarly at your end to listen is also saving something somewhere and helping in my own little way. As little as I can contribute, I do my best. But most primarily I try to do no harm and to make very little impact and as small a footprint as possible. In fact, become invisible. Thank you for watching. Until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.